that very, very dangerous.
Get these spidey sense, you know, I was like, oh, something's off.
And I'm just like, man, I'm waiting to hear something, you know.
Keep that crowd warmed up. Is Mr. Jehovah Tiger.
What's going on, guys? And welcome to another 2025 edition of the Warcry Podcast. This is technically the first episode of 2025, but I always like to take a look back. That's kind of my thing on this podcast, is we always take a look back. And before we take a look back on this wonderful year that was 2024, can everyone hear me? If you're in here, let me know if you can hear me, if it's up to your standards. But one thing about 2024 is that it was a movie. It was cinema. 2024 was a year that made us sound so cooked. We were so cooked. It was ridiculous. And you ever watch a first movie, like a first movie of a trilogy, and the first movie you're like, man, this can't get any more crazier. Like this is peaking. Well, then they run the trailer for the second one, and you're like, God bless, this is even more crazy. Well, that's 2025, guys. If you've seen on my shorts, dang, that sounds kind of crazy. On the short that I posted, I get it. 2025 is about to be crazy. It's about to be insane. But we ain't going to go there yet. Before we get to everything, I'm going to run a bunch of clips for y'all tonight. Different things that I enjoyed, over the course of the year. Stories from different guests, myself included. I guess I'm a guest on my own show sometimes. Sponsor of the podcast, Not Your Grandma's Quilting. Facebook. Just type it in, Not Your Grandma's Quilting. They're based out of Wagner County here in Oklahoma. They're actually selling a bunch of quilts. I'm glad, I'm proud, and so that's amazing. So they're a sponsor of the podcast. I'll eventually link them in the description. Sometimes I'll be forgetting to mess with the description sometimes, but I think that hurts me too. But anyways, Not Your Grandma's Quilting. Go check them out on Facebook. I believe they take cash if you're local, Venmo, PayPal, and all those other good places. It's on the Facebook page. But Not Your Grandma's Quilting. Also, too, the Patreon. Like, we got our first Patreon guest Saturday. It'll be Weird Paranormal. It's a paranormal group out of Maine. I think I said that. Weird Maine Paranormal. That's the name. We will be, going live on there. So you got to have a membership. $5 a month. It's $5, but hey, supports the podcast. Got a lot of things coming up, especially on the Patreon. A lot more content. I'm going to be trying to really, 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 bring a lot of stuff on the Patreon. And then also, too, you're going to get those Patreon stuff. It may be like a month later, maybe 2 months. We still will be, we still will be having our usual live streams, and we'll have guests on too as well. But the Patreon, it's in the description below. $5 to be a tribe member, and like I said, Saturday at 8:00 Central, and then 9:00 Eastern time. Go sign up. But with that being said, 2024 with the podcast, I had to do y'all a good one. So this first clip that I'm going to play is from the very first beginning of 2024, and This Is Creepy. Tiger, we're back again with another This Is Creepy, and this is the 5th edition of this series. Now, as you guys, I've done a lot of, I guess you could say, editing, and a lot of, a lot of music, things like that. I've added spooky sound effects. But on this one, we're just going to kind of kick it I got some stories for y'all, that I would say pretty interesting. One thing about this series that I absolutely love is people will send me stories that I will, I'll read them and talk to that person, and I forget about the story. So some of these stories I've kind of went back into the old. Some of these are from TikTok. People have sent me stories on there. Some of these are from Facebook. But if you have a story, I want to make sure that I plug this. Send me the story, and like I said, we'll talk about it. I'm pretty easy to reach. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can the email realwarcrypod@gmail.com. I've had people send me audio clips. I've had people just send me not handwritten. Dang, was it 18th century? Y'all just out here sending me letters, and I'm reading them via pigeon, and I'm just living my best life. And all of a sudden, I look over and there's this squawking sound at the window, and I open the window and there's a pigeon with a letter attached to its feet, and I open the letter and I read the story. I get very scared. Then I write my response, maybe a sentence or two, asking them the question, ask the person sending the pigeon a question regarding their story, and I send the pigeon back, and then I hear, a couple months later, I hear back from that person. And that's kind of how I do things here at the Warcry Podcast. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm pretty easy to reach. Sometimes I have to apologize to some people. I reply and then I forget to reply, or I'll type the message and don't hit send. I apologize, but I appreciate everyone that has sent stories in. Man, a lot of keen stories, man, have people have sent. And one thing I want to say, I appreciate people that are afraid to tell their story because it's kind of people won't believe them, and I've said this before, but I believe, your guys' stories. And so I just want to make sure that I put that out there. So if you got a story, send it to me. Like I said, I like to chop it up. I like to ask questions because I want to make sure I get your story right and all that good stuff. But this first story comes out of Canada. And one thing about this gentleman who he's continues to send me stories, he's got a bunch of them. He's been around a long time. And this story goes like this. My wife and I were working overnight at a cultural camp down at the powwow ground. It was just me and her basically all night. We had to keep an eye on things that, as the night went on, people messing around. But it was about 3 or 4 in the morning, and we're sitting in the vehicle. I remember it was getting real chilly, and my wife had dozed off. And so I was watching a movie on my phone. And I would occasionally shine the spotlight, kind of taking a look around to see if anything was going on. But when the movie was over, I rolled down the window and was just listening to the quietness. And all of a sudden, I started hearing kids playing. The grounds did have a playground, but I decided not to tell my wife until the camp was over, even though that she's experienced a lot of strange things in her life. I still didn't want to scare her. I asked her if there used to be a school or something around here, and she said there wasn't, but there were some graves up on the hill above the powwow ground. Man, that's one thing, as I, read and listen, I guess you listen, I think of a story that was told to me about the school that was across the street on Foley in Eufaula. There used to be an old school there, and they tore it down. It's just like a little field now, but it's over there by the tribal town, Eufaula Canadian Tribal Town headquarters. But they would say every now and then they'd be out there kind of talking or whatever, and all of a sudden it sound like children playing out in this abandoned elementary school. But that's all around the place. Powwow grounds, church grounds, all these different, I guess, places where kids can feel safe to be, themselves. You hear those things. You hear those sounds of those kids playing. And that story, is a good one because, they're all over the place. People hear those things all the time, around those areas I mentioned. Next story, and this one is about little people. And I have a few stories on this episode about little people, so buckle up. Buckle up, dang. But my wife told me this story about little people. She said that there was a house being built, and there was piles of sand still around the foundation. She said the little people were playing in the sand piles. They're laughing and giggling. That's one thing, I mentioned on the last kind of Omen episode, is that those things are around. Those entities, those beings are around, and they do, they are in, everyday life. I've mentioned this multiple times on different platforms, but we just never really know where we're living. Whose home was that before it was our home. And, it's just very it's a good story to kind of think about. This next story is about Dogman, and this is also out of Canada. I have heard a story about a Dogman being seen by a cemetery here in Canada. This guy that's from around here was walking down the road by the cemetery when he had seen what he described as a big wolf, but it was looking kind of like a dog too. It had come out of the ditch onto the road, and he described it as being really, really big with big red eyes. It was on all fours, but then it stood up on two. He said he would never forget those red eyes. That reminds me of the story that this gentleman told about his wife seeing a dog man in an old abandoned house where she was playing around with her cousin, and she looked over in the corner and there was that dog man standing with those red eyes. I think that was on the last This Is Creepy, but something about those red eyes. I'm always wondering if it's like a light thing, like where light hits and they're red. But that's a great story because that's those red eyes have been seen all over the place. Next story is my late uncle, the one who would feed Bigfoots. And now, if you guys kind of harken back to the previous This Is Creepy, this is who he was talking about, is this uncle who used to feed Bigfoot. And that story is in the previous This Is Creepy. But he had equipment to look for Bigfoot and ghosts and basically everything creepy that lurked in the night. And one night we went out there, and he had one of those bionic ears or parabolic dish type things. And I was using it to try to hear anything. We were walking down the road towards the powwow grounds. He said, and how he describes this is, he basically said he could hear little kids talking and whispering. And as he got closer, one of the craziest things he's ever heard, and this is from this gentleman, is he heard one of them saying that parabolic mic thing was, "They're coming." I'm getting goosebumps hearing that. There used to be a Head Start that was haunted out there, and my mom and uncle used to work out at that that daycare, that Head Start. And my mom would say that there would be a little boy playing with the other kids on the playground, and sometimes one of the swings would be moving by itself. There was always spooky things out there. Man, that's creepy. Imagine walking down the road and you hear, "They're coming, they're coming." That, to me, that's very spooky. And the kids playing. This is kind of crazy. We were out at Pawnee, Spirit Talkers, when I was running with those guys when we did live events last spooky season, and not this one, but the year before. And Russell Sun Eagle caught a video of, I believe it was like a merry-go-round spinning by itself, or it might have been a swing, but it's on the Spirit Talkers TikTok. But that thing was going by itself, and it wasn't windy or anything. It was crazy. But that's what that reminds me of when I hear that story, especially about a haunted Head Start. That the kids are playing, and there'd be always one kid out there that didn't belong or not really there. The kids was all playing with him. It's kind of crazy. I don't know if you guys remember the story that I told about my time when I was at Woodall, and it was on the early, I think it was the early years. I might have forgot to tell that story, but I had a buddy who was playing. We were all playing kind of hide and go seek or some type of game like that where we had a home base, and if everybody gets to the home base, the person that's it has to be it again or whatever. And my buddy was chasing something, some shadow or something. I don't know what it is, and he said he couldn't quite make it out, but it looked little like a kid, and so he was running after it. He couldn't quite catch it, but when he made it back to the home base, he realized everybody was there, and he was chasing something that wasn't it wasn't there. And that's one thing about This Is Creepy, and that's a clip from the first This Is Creepy of 2024, in January of 2024. People will send me stories, and sometimes I won't get to them for quite a while, and then all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even respond," and then now I have another story from them. But I want to thank everyone who has sent stories for This Is Creepy. This Is Creepy Part 7 is coming out at the end of this month or at the beginning of February. I know I keep telling you guys, "Oh, it's coming, it's coming." I'm just trying to. I got a lot of things that I'm trying to work out, and so We'll be having that at, like I said, at the end of January, early February. Um, let's see here in the comments. I asked a few questions. So if you guys are listening to this on the back end, I want to know a few questions. What was your favorite moment of 2024? That could be anything. It could be Cat Williams predicting the future. That could be, man, there's so much crazy stuff. Shannon Sharp and his incident, I talked about that. P. Diddy getting arrested, getting raided. Dang, if Trump getting elected, if that's your thing. Just what's your favorite moment of 2024? Another question is, what's your favorite episode of the podcast in 2024? Another question is favorite story on the podcast in 2024? And what was your favorite interview in 2024? So a couple questions on the back end when you hear this. Oh, I got a few interesting things, but Pyromedic says the gal that worked at the casino and shared her stories was his favorite interview. My wife says her favorite one was the casino one. You know what's crazy about that? I did not include any of that in this episode because we're going to have another episode with her, pretty soon. And so, I want to make sure that, but I want to make sure that, we hit everything and then, add it into 2025 maybe. But that interview was a great interview. Weird stuff, different weird kind of things going on. But bear with me, guys. I'm trying to change the mic here. But yeah, that was a good interview. Let's see here. Another interview was Patrick Meekin. That was another great one. Really good. One thing about Patrick, he has so many stories that he hadn't even hit yet. Like, I'm gonna have him on again, probably on the Patreon, because some of the stuff, it's kind of triggering. It kind of is. It's real spooky, to be honest with you. One of these days, you may hear my story about a man I met in Houston, and me and him had that conversation about that and what this man looked like, and kind of what he was wearing and what he knew, and he was telling me that this man had been described before in a different state multiple times in different states. So eventually I'll tell that story. That's another reason why I don't like going to Texas. Maybe it's just maybe the guardian of Texas doesn't allow Oklahoma people or Okies into the state. I don't know, but that was really kind of a weird time in my life. Pyromedic says the Cherokee Nation just bought several Indian mission schools from the government, as they were called. May get into some strangeness when they start construction. Plane kicked the can one night when we were done. Something unseen kicked it out of the yard. Dang. That's kind of crazy. But 2024 was a good year for the podcast. It grew a lot. I had multiple different guests. And speaking of Mr. Patrick Meekin, there's a beautiful intro. Him and I had a really few long conversations about his time and trying to help people with different entities. And this is one of my favorite stories and clips that he shared on the podcast. This is the last part of his first interview, and it was called Dodging Demons. But here's the clip from that.
Intriguing. Mm-hmm. When it comes to certain types of mental illness, so we talk about, like you talk about the demon of suicide or the demon of mm-hmm. greed or whatever it may end up being. Mm-hmm. I was talking to somebody who does, and I mentioned this before the show before we mm-hmm. Started recording, but I know somebody who helps homeless people, and mm-hmm. they would go out and they do deliverance and just kind of spread the word to people that may not have access to doing that. And one of the stories that I was told, and this gives me, I'm getting goosebumps even just mentioning this, but he had a big guy come up to him, and he's about 6'6", 350 pounds, big guy, homeless guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's giving him, food and, just saying, hey, can I have a word with you? I just want to make sure, that you understand, what we're out here doing. And the homeless guy goes, yeah, that's fine. And when he goes to put his hand on the big man's shoulders, the big man just screamed and freaked out as he was praying over him, and he touched him.
Yeah.
The big man just freaked out and said, "Don't you touch me!" And the voice that the man spoke in was not the voice that he came up in. Like he came up to them speaking.
Mm-hmm.
My question, to you, and like I said, I know you have a background in probably seeing these types of things. Do you think that the homeless people are dealing with these demons?
I'm going to say people with anytime there's human suffering, demons are rampant because they love human suffering, and those people are suffering. So the demons love that. Now, this is sad to say, but I have quite a few years experience working with people with psych issues as well. Okay. I believe a lot of that, there's a demonic component. And I think a lot of it still, though, the root cause is trauma. Some kind of horrible trauma happened to them that they did not deserve, and they haven't been able to handle it. And the devil's like, thank you very much. Because they went through that, I'm going to torment them now. And it turns into a lot of times they end up, they can't handle it. So they drink to forget it. And then now they end up, it ruins their life, or they use drugs or whatever. Or they just get involved in really bad behavior where they're harming themselves, because that helps them to feel something if they're cutting themselves, And I think a lot of the people that have mental disorders, it's possible to have a mental disorder that is a mental disorder, because the Bible talks about Jesus in the King James. It talks about him casting out demons and healing lunatics. And but I also want to say, I think if a person has a mental condition, they're a sitting duck for demonic attack, because they are dealing with something that makes them vulnerable. And the devil doesn't play fair. He's going to mess with them. He knows they're vulnerable, so he's going to take advantage of that. I would say that it's a big part of all of that, the situation with the individual you spoke of. What comes to mind, what I'm thinking of is, did that guy go through something horrible as a child? And when somebody, he does not like people touching him. Even if you put your hand on his shoulder, like, hey buddy, how you doing? A nice gesture to him, don't touch me, So there might be something like that. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. But when you take that trauma, then that's an open door to demons to enter him, even though he was an innocent victim, if that did happen. So I'm going to say there's no question there's something spiritually going on there. Him talking in another voice, reacting like that. I do believe, yeah, it is. There's a demonic component to that. I would say certainly. Yeah,
because that's one thing that we in Native communities, we always talk about. There's always the component of addiction and addiction to really anything. Gambling. Mm-hmm. You hear the stereotypes and when it comes to natives, but I always wondered about that, because I've seen people in just regular life, have a pretty decent life, and then something happens, and with some people, we just may never know what happened to them. They don't open up about it, and then all of a sudden they take that downturn, and they're going in a totally different direction, and you're just like, what can I do? And what are some ways that you would say, and like I said, I know I do have people that are Christians that listen to this show.
Mhm.
What would you say to help those people that are feeling like they're, maybe not themselves, or it could be, a demonic thing, or it could
Mhm.
be, really anything. What would you say to try to help those people?
Well, there'd be a couple of things. Say there was trauma that they are aware of, and sometimes people don't remember because they block it out because it was horrible. But if they are aware of it, couple of things. Even though this is very hard to do, forgive the person that did it. You can still think they're horrible, but you can still think they're a monster. But to the best of your ability, forgive them and ask God to help you to do that. Number one. Number two, when there's a spiritual issue, there is oftentimes something. Yeah, people open doors themselves in their own lives, but there's also usually something generationally going on. And what I'm speaking of is generational curses. So one thing I would recommend is, start praying. Number one, put your faith in Jesus. Number one, he is the Son of God. He died and rose again. He sits at the right hand of the Father and makes intercession on our behalf. He is coming again. Believe those things. They're true. Believe those first of all, and accept him as your Savior, repent of your sins, ask him to help you, because sometimes people are so heavy into sin. They're like, I don't know how. I want to quit, but I don't know how. Well, ask him to help you and just trust him. Okay. That's the beginning. But beyond that, when there's generational curses, pray and renounce all the sins of your ancestors all the way back to Adam and Eve. And if you know of certain sins, if you know, like, yeah, my grandpa was this or that, or my great-great-grandpa did this or was a murderer or something, renounce. If you know it specifically what happened, renounce it. But also just, it's fair to take a shotgun approach and just start naming things that do open doors to demons, the occult. I renounce any occult involvement that anyone in my ancestry was involved in. And renounce, any murder, renounce things that, we know are bad, and we know our sins, and renounce those things in Jesus' name. And that starts breaking down legal rights demons have to an individual. That starts breaking down those legal rights. And then, once you renounce those things and say, in Jesus' name, I break any curses that are in my life because of my sins or the sins of my ancestors. And, be specific about anything that comes to mind that you've done personally. Do that as well. But renounce the sins, break the curses from the sins, and bind the demons in Jesus.
And so that clip is from the last part with Patrick Meekin. I had another interview with him in October. Go check that out. One thing about that topic of angels, demons, and things like that, I always get goosebumps, man. It's just something about it. I'm drawn to it. I fall down rabbit holes, and I think it's because I've had some dealings with these things, I guess you could say. I wouldn't say like totally, but like there was things that I just, I knew wasn't right. Like something's off about this, and it went against my better nature. And eventually, I may actually tell that story on the Patreon because the people are still around, and I don't want to conjure up anything where I'm, getting myself or my family, under anything, because these things are out here. Which the New Age witchcraft thing is real, and I always have to tell these, hey, okay, we're good, I'm good. I don't want no problems, because a lot of times I think some of these people don't they know what they're doing, but they don't know the depths of what they're doing, and it's also kind of weird too. The story that I have from somebody who was a New Age person, and then stories I've gotten from people who are I've worked with that were into that stuff and were doing stuff actively to people. I've told a few stories on different people's podcasts. It's just, it goes out into the ether, I think. But Patrick, man, is a great guest. He always brings the heat, and he believes what he's saying, and I don't really fall into the secular organized religion. I believe in that there is a higher power. But I don't know, something's off about it. And one of these days I may talk about it on the Patreon. It may make some people mad of what I think. But I guess we all have our opinions. But this next clip is talking about a place. Now, I have done some digging on this place after this episode, and that's usually what happens. I'll release an episode talking about a place or somewhere, and somebody will reach out and say, "Yeah, that's not really what's happening. Here's what's going on." And I had a gentleman reach out to me about this place, saying that he'd been out there multiple times, hanging out. Nothing really happened. They were out there drinking around, whatever, and nothing really happened. So, but this is a clip from the Creepy Oklahoma. I believe it was part 2. And it's about Purple House. I believe. I may hit the wrong clip, but we'll see.
And, one thing about this place is it has a lot of reports. Like so many reports that I was like, man, this is all sounding the same. Like there's got to be something to it, because people are having the same stories. With some are they're varied a little bit, but the Purple Church isn't really a church, and it's not purple. I think the only thing on that property is I think it's like a slab of pavement where maybe a schoolhouse or something was there before, or maybe a church was there. But there's a low a basement and a cellar on the property. Now, this property is privately owned, and in the documentary, the owner of the property did not want to be revealed, and so they kind of went under like a black light or like a voice altering, and they basically said that there's nothing wrong with the property. They've never experienced anything creepy, anything scary. They don't have satanic worshipers on there, and it's basically they hired their neighbor, who is a lot of accounts are they call him a gun wielding redneck, someone who is what do they call it? What's the Homelander type person. They got to have their guns on them at all time. That's a lot of how they described it. And so this person is gun wielding. They're aggressive. They sometimes people have said that they've seen booby traps or some type of like ropes hanging, different creepy stuff like that. And in the documentary, the owner of the property said, we did hire our neighbor to watch our property. We're trying to get it situated. Our money, is kind of run low. We couldn't afford to start building, and so we hired him. He's got a bunch of dogs, and the dogs patrol the property. But there's a part of this Purple Church, when people say it's just an urban legend, or it's just, it's just a bunch of kids out there wilding out, trying to have a good time. And one of the I guess you could say qualities, or one of the characteristics of this place is that people that go on the property, and there have been pictures circulating the internet for years of I'm talking many dead animals. The animals range from cats, dogs, even horses on this property that'll just be dead, laying there. You guys have heard my stories, especially the cult activity episode. That's what I encountered with my friend out in this area. And I don't know how to explain it. A lot of people say it's a satanic cult. There are satanic pentagrams all over the place in that property, on trees, on the cellar, on the pavement slab. And there's kind of like I said, hundreds of animals have been killed on that property. That's one thing that I find very interesting. Other people have went into the cellar and they could feel something behind them and something that's lording over them, like a heavy type of feeling, energy, and they can't stand it almost. It's like a pain almost, I guess you could say, or an agony, or some type of anxiety that falls over them and they run out. People have been, have went out there and have been chased on the property by robed figures. They have seen people out there dancing around a fire, for whatever reason. And then people go back to the gun-wielding dogs everywhere. This guy who has sicks his dogs on people. People have felt hands on their shoulders, and they look, and there's nobody there. There was a story that had that was kind of a funny one, but a guy went out there one night. Him and his buddies were trashed. They was hammered. They were gone to the wind, and they went out there and they said, let's go out here and mess around. And they went out there, and the guy, they saw someone basically chasing them in the woods, but they couldn't see him. It was almost like a shadow. Those guys were so scared that they decided they would rather be in jail. They would rather get a public intox or a DUI than have to be captured by this shadow creature, shadow being, which is kind of crazy, that someone be that scared that they don't even care if the cops are there. Cops pulled them over and basically said, "Hey, what's going on?" "Oh, we just, we're out here messing around," and they got scared. So there's a lot of different crazy things out there. People have seen orbs out there. One of the craziest things I think when it comes to the lore and the creepiness of this place is, you guys remember Sean Sellers, the 16-year-old Satanist who was convicted of killing his parents and a convenience store clerk in Oklahoma City. It has been said that he used the property for his satanic rituals. For a background for people that don't know who Sean Sellers is, on September 8th, 1985, Sellers shot and killed Robert Bower, a convenience store clerk in Oklahoma City. One thing that's crazy about this kid is, according to Sellers' best friend, who was with him at the time of the murder, Sellers said that, "Man, I just want to kill somebody. I want to know how it feels to kill somebody," which is a crazy line. That is a crazy line to be saying that out loud. And then on March 5th, 1986, Sellers shot and killed his mother and his stepfather while they were sleeping in their beds in Oklahoma City. And during his trial, his defense argued that he was addicted to Dungeons and Dragons, and that started a whole kind of satanic panic in the 80s. Which, hey, that stuff is creepy. I ain't gonna lie. If you do that stuff, hey, leave me alone. I'm good. It's creepy. But basically, he was playing Dungeons and Dragons and got controlled by a demon, and he had no control over his actions and what he was doing. And he ended up, getting convicted. And at the time of his execution, he basically said that he was a victim of multiple personality disorder. But he was executed by lethal injection at 12/17 on February 5th, 1999. Now, there's a kind of a weird thing where it's like either he is like, this is what he said or this is what he said. So his stepsister said that his final words was, "Set my spirit free that I might praise thee. Set my spirit free that I might worship thee." I was looking up kind of a serial killer forum, and people in the crowd that were watching his execution said that he was talking to Satan and was like, "I'm coming home to you, Father." So I don't know. Anyway, I got goosebumps when I said that. That's crazy. I can't believe I said that. But yeah, crazy dude. But they say down at the Purple Church, that's where he started his rituals, was at that place. So, man, who knows what's going on over there at the Purple Church? Don't go there unless you have permission. I'd hate for someone to get lit up, by gunfire, or lit up by these shadow beings or shadow things that are grabbing people in the night. I'd hate for you to get bitten on the leg by a dog. I'd hate for you to walk in on a sacrifice, a cult ritual. I don't know, guys, but, there's a lot of reports.
And like I said, there's just a lot of different, I guess you could say, stories, reports out there about the Purple Church. And like I said, I had somebody come forward, it ain't nothing, it's just all whatever. And this is after the episode dropped, but who knows? If you've been out there, let me know if you've had an experience out there different than nothing happening. My paranormal investigation days are cooked. I've had some people ask me. I've had some people kind of, dude, you want to? One of the last ones I went to was with after the Pawnee storytelling. We went down to that park. No, that was Hominy. Not park. After Hominy storytelling, we went down to this park, and me and this young guy were walking kind of ahead, and all of a sudden I look up and I thought I saw a little shadow person, but I thought it was a little person, like an LP. We both looked at each other. We said, "You see that?" And he goes, "Yeah, man, I saw that." What do you think that was? I was like, "That has to be little people, or a shadow person or something." Because it literally was just, it was like it was just kind of running from like hiding place to hiding place. It was real creepy. And that was at a Hominy. And at Pawnee, I don't understand. If anyone can explain this to me in the comments, these voice box, spirit box type things, are they real? Because we were at Pawnee and we were over at the Pawnee, I guess, the Pawnee Nation University, the school over there, the college. And I had this spirit box thing on my phone, and I can't remember the one I used. I'd have to look it up, but it kept telling me some weird stuff. Like we were down in this basement where they said that the headmaster, the head school guy, principal or whatever, or the guy that was running the school at the time, or he basically, did some things down in this basement. Well, the basement's still there, and there's like a little step to go down, and then you look in, and it's just kind of this little small concrete room. And I stuck my hand. I wasn't going down there. I knew, man, there was one guy. I ain't trying to front nobody out, but man, there was one guy that's cooked. Hey, how you out here drinking, ghost hunting? That's crazy. But anyways, I stuck my hand about halfway down, and it said, "You need to," like it basically said, "Get out or leave." And I was like, "Oh, back to back like that?" If anyone can tell me if that's real. When we did the investigation about a couple years ago of South County Recreation Center, which is Tulsa County facility, we did like a little paranormal investigation over there, and we ran into a spirit named Malice. And I was like, oof. Right in the like right in the hall of the women's bathroom, like you're going into the bathroom. I mean, there's nobody there, but just us four. But that place is creepy too. We basically had lockers, and one thing about was weird about that place is we always had we always close the lockers because it's just kind of a thing for me, I guess. But we come in and they'd all be like open to a certain like way. Like they'd all be kind of just barely open or open halfway perfectly. And so it's always just kind of weird vibes out there. But yeah, my investigation day, it's going to take a lot for me to get out there and paranormal ghost hunt, stuff like that. I know there's a few people out there that do that. Hey, more power to you. So 2024 for the podcast has just been, like I said, the podcast is growing, and I appreciate people that support the podcast. A lot of different topics this year. One thing that I think I want to get into more, especially in 2025, I want to get more into more conspiracies because there are so many conspiracies right now. I may just do a show sometime next week regarding everything that's happened from January 1st to like then. I mean, we had 2 terrorist attacks, from soldiers. We've had basically the answer to the drones and like what the drones were all of end of 2024. We've had Skip Bayless, Oklahoma native, offering $1.5 million to sleep with somebody. That is crazy to throw that kind of bread around, man. Take me, Skip. No homo, but anyways, take me. 1.5. Man, that's crazy. But he offered 1.5, and so he's being sued for that. And dang, don't take me, Skip. I'm just kidding. But that's crazy work, man. That's crazy work. 1.5 just to sleep with somebody? Man, that's deviant. Shannon Sharp coming out saying he had nothing to do with it. All types of crazy stuff going on. College football, Georgia got beat. Everybody's up in arms about that. Arizona lost to Texas. There's just a lot of crazy stuff going on. I feel like every time I open Twitter, something else is going on. Or Facebook. Right now, we're in the middle of a snowstorm. Cliff High has a language data gathering internet tool, AI algorithm thing, and basically the entire South is supposed to get cleansed, apparently, of, I guess, the chemtrails. So there's a lot to talk about that I can go into about 2025 up to this point. WWE's rocking. Netflix, WWE's on Netflix. A lot of crazy stuff. AEW's on Max. I'm gonna say this too, real quick, about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. As much as I hate his movies, he gets on my last nerves in his movies. But man, when he's The Rock, that's a different cat right there, man. That dude's something else. In 2025, we got so many great movies coming out and shows. Squid Games Part 3 in June. We have, Batman got pushed back again. I know I mentioned that before. I'm upset about that. What else we have? Stranger Things. We have Last of Us. We have You on Netflix. This is great. When I say 2025 is going to be cinema, 2025 is going to be cinema. Absolute cinema. Now, I have been pondering 2024's my movie and my TV shows the list for top 10. And I have a top 10, but I'm going to give y'all some of my favorites for 2024. Squid Games is up there. If you haven't seen Squid Games 2, I'd do it now. It's almost more brutal than the first one. And there's also more lore to it, too. So, like, if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to ruin it. The second one on my list for TV shows of 2024 is From Season 3. That show is annoying, but I love it because they just give you enough, and then they give you a lot, and then they just give you enough, and then they give you a lot. And it's like Lost, but they're stuck in a small town. It's on MGM Plus, but they're stuck in a small town where at night monsters come out. So that's my number 2. My number 3 has to be Under the Bridge, starring Lily Gladstone. It's about a Native American cop who was adopted by a white Canadian family. And she's investigating the disappearance of a Indian. So Indian from India. Indian girl who went missing. And there's so much juice to that, man. So much meat on the bones on that, because there's a lot of stuff, especially at the end of that show, makes me absolutely sick. Like, makes me so sick because of what she finds out about herself. It's a must watch. Under the Bridge. It's on Hulu. Now, my fourth show is The Ones Who Live, The Walking Dead, the Rick Grimes and Michonne. Man, that show was cinema. The ending was perfect. There's rumors that Rick is going to show up in Dead City. I hope. But it completes the story of Rick Grimes and why he's gone. Beautiful cinema. Loved it. And then I'm not going to do 10, guys. I'm not going to do y'all crazy. But the Dexter, what was it? Prequel is pretty good. It's out there. The Agency. But I got to give my 5 has got to be Yellowstone. And for the simple fact is that it ended. Now, I don't know, Kevin Costner messed things up. I don't know what's going on with that. The ending was not what I wanted. But the ending of how they got there is not how I wanted it. But it ended how I believe it should have ended. Because the show started a certain way. It has to end the same way. And I love the full circleness. Shout out to Chief Rainwater in that show, he got business done. He got that land back. If you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, I just ruined it. But natives got their stuff back. Respect. I know that there's people, oh, the woke. It's woke. The land back people, it's woke. I don't want to hear it. I'm not very woke. I'm just awake. Barely. But Yellowstone was in my top 5 for sure. Now TV show or now movies. Huge fan. M. Night Shyamalan Productions. Movies. The Watchers was good. I love Trap. They take me on my twists and turns that I like that M. Night Shyamalan does. And then he produced a movie called Caddo Lake that I absolutely love this year, 2024. Not this year. Last year in 2024. Blink Twice is uncomfortable, to say the least. The twist is, it's just nasty work in that movie. But it's just, it's a movie that once you realize what's going on, and it's just like, and you see the Diddy stuff, you hear about Jay-Z, which hopefully, fingers crossed that Jay-Z ain't involved. That's my number one rapper of all time. He's a GOAT. But it's uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable watch. A few other movies that came out. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It's in there. Love that movie. My Old Ass on Amazon Prime with Aubrey Plaza. Dang, she just lost her husband too. Suicide 2025. I'm like, 2025 is wilding out right now. But she's in that movie. Basically, it's about a girl who takes drugs and hallucinates her older self, and it has like a time travel thing to it. And it's pretty good. It's really good, actually. They almost had me too. I was like, God, this is sad. But it's a good movie for 2024. There's so many stinking movies in 2024. But if you have a movie that you liked in 2024 or a TV show, put it down. There's a bunch of other movies I don't have a list of on the top of my head. Alien Romulus is up there for me. Violent Nature is up there for me. Oddity, a bunch of horror movies that I've talked about with Mr. Kevin Ness from the Mac Ness podcast. We talked about that. It's just a lot of cool stuff going on. A lot of cool stuff that happened in 2024 when it came to movies. Kind of coming off COVID, everybody was kind of trying to slow play stuff and things like that. But a lot of good movies and stuff. I'll post I'm going to post in the description all the movies that I would recommend watching in 2024. It's just a lot, and I've watched so many things. I had to go through my letterbox to see, but fast forwarding, rewinding back into more middle of 2024. I did an episode about monkey people. I had received a bunch of stories about people seeing things about monkeys and different kind of weird humanoid, but monkey, chimpanzee looking people things. But here's this clip.
I had a former teacher of mine reach out and mention this book, and I had read that book as a young guy. And some of those stories, I remember hearing those stories from other people, similar stories. But this story goes, the Boy Scout hole is a swimming area on Barren Fork Creek, deep in the woods of southeast Tahlequah, Oklahoma, near the community of Welling. It's a great place to visit in the daytime, but not a place you would want your kids to be at night. A few years ago, my husband and I took a trip to Mexico, leaving our oldest child in charge of our youngest ones. My son, Nick, was about 15, and he told me the story when we returned. It was March, and the weather was very nice, so Nick had decided that it would be a good time to go camping in the family van. This young guy, said, I'm 15, I'm grown. I'm going to get in that van and just take off. But those are the days, though. I feel like my generation missed those good days. We're like, you know what? I'm 12. Let me take the tractor out real quick. Let me just go out there and while out, or let me just take the family truck to go down to my friend's house down the road. And I feel like those days were pretty good. Maybe they weren't. I don't know. I wasn't born. So they took a few of their friends and drove down this road to Boy Scout Hole. And there wasn't any electricity out there at the time, and so they parked the van in the dark. Nick and his friend climbed up on the top of the roof and were planning to sleep up there for the night, while the other kids stayed inside in the van. After everything got quiet, Nick and his friend began to hear strange noises coming out of the trees. And in the darkness, they could suddenly make out figures with human-looking faces sitting on the branches of the trees and looking right at them. Nick and his friend leaped off the roof and jumped inside the van, while with the other kids, trying to lock the doors and shut the windows. Then about 10 of these creatures were on the ground. Nick said they looked like characters from the Planet of the Apes, with more human-looking features. One of the monkey people approached the van and put its hand on the glass, and the next thing any of the kids can remember is waking up in the daylight. At first, Nick thought it must have been a dream, but then the other kids woke up, and each remembering being terrified by those things and somehow going to sleep until the morning. Nick also mentioned seeing lights off in the distance while the creatures were outside the van. Hearing that story brought memories of the time when I was at the Boy Scout hole at night with a group of friends, and we saw circular objects surrounded by lights coming down from the sky and landing back in the woods across the creek. But we didn't stick around long enough to find out what it was. And that's one thing that I'll say about these types of beings. There was a podcast like I said, once again, shout out to Matt Knapp from Bigfoot Crossroads. He had a person on here in the last probably 2 or 3 months. And this person talked about UFOs being not really UFOs and things being morphed. So for instance, if someone saw a monkey person or a devil monkey, to them that's what they see. But to another person who would see the same thing would see it differently, unless they were on the same wavelength, I guess. But this person used the word plasma. And in my head, that made me think. I thought it was very interesting. I don't believe that. I believe we're the aliens. I honestly believe that we're probably the aliens, human beings. And the things that we see that we are not accustomed to seeing in our day-to-day lives can morph into what scares us. And one thing about those two stories that make me think, and like I said, they could have well seen monkeys, but one thing that I think that we as human beings, especially here in Oklahoma, we don't know nothing about monkeys. Like, I know Florida has a few of them. I know South America, probably Lower Mexico, Panama, they probably all have monkeys. But here in Oklahoma, our mind does not process monkeys unless someone has a pet, little monkey or whatever. And that's one thing that I'm curious to wonder. This will be a question when I do die, which is a long time from now, hopefully, that's the first question I'm asking. What is the paranormal? Is it, is a paranormal not really paranormal? Is it normal? And we as humans are the paranormal. That's the question I'm asking. And I know that's a very deep question, and whoever I'm asking it to, higher power, creator, I'm going to ask that question, because that's one thing that I just find so intriguing, is that us as humans, we continue, we say we do things to help, to support, but in actuality, we actually destroy things. That's one thing that I think Mother Earth and the planet and all of its creations and beings that live here, I think that's why we have things that destroy mankind, is they are aware that we are growing at an alarming rate. Now, granted, if you want to get into politics and all that other stuff, that we're technically, our birth rate here in America is declining. But for the last 100 years, we've been expanding. We've been blowing up. We terrorize, things that are here. And I think that's why people look at us natives as the closest thing to nature. Because we, as a people, we understood that the earth is alive. We understood that there are things that come from the earth that we don't understand, or that we may understand, but it's not of this place. And I think that's why a lot of non-natives look to Native Americans as part of the earth. And I would agree with a lot of that, because for a lot of years, natives lived in harmony with nature. We respected the earth. We respected the waters. We respected the trees. We didn't use the trees unless we needed the trees. And then we would tell the trees and we communicate, thank you for, allowing us to have, this warmth, the fire, or the, the use of structure for a home, using that. And then, we'd always do that to the ground, the mud, the dirt, those things have been around for a long time, longer than any of us, as a species. And I think that's why natives maybe see things more, is there's something in us that, we see things, we have that ability to, experience things that other people can't. And that's why for a lot of years, I talked to a lot of people, in my comings and goings in my life, and every single time I talk to somebody and they're, they have some native heritage, they tell me a story. They know something. And maybe that's me being biased. I don't know. But, people I don't think are supposed to be here. An interview that I heard that was really kind of shocking to me, and it kind of rocked me to my beliefs a little bit. I started really kind of questioning what I think about things. There was a remote viewer, I can't remember his name now, Joseph McDougal, I think, and he was the first ever remote viewer for the CIA, and he had accurately described and guessed multiple situations for our government and the CIA. And he got an envelope one day, and he had said that, hey, there's this is what's going on. This is what we want you to see. And so he does. He sees, and he goes off to this barren planet and this barren wasteland that didn't look anything like he's seen before. And he started noticing that there were pyramids there. And he thought that was odd. He was like, huh. And then they were like, after the fact, they tell him, yeah, that was Mars. We're trying to figure out what's there. In the movie, and when I heard that, the movie 65 Million with Adam Driver came to my mind. It made me think, like, what if we're from there and we got into some war that destroyed Mars? Because circadian rhythm is a real thing with humans. We have a different way that we tick, and this Earth, in the way that the Earth is made up, doesn't fit with our circadian rhythm. I don't know. That's a lot of information, and it's kind of crazy too, but that information rocked me. I was like, man, that's not, I haven't really thought of that.
Yeah, I was spitting fire on that one. I ain't gonna lie. I had some heat on that day. But the circadian rhythm thing, and we're even seeing it now here, and with the different remote viewer people that have come forward since that. One thing that always makes me wonder about remote viewing too, speaking of that, I've heard people say it's demonic. I was talking to somebody in oil and gas, and they were telling me basically that they believed it was of the devil because it's using different deities or demons or entities to almost kind of deceive us a little bit, and really kind of shading the truth, kind of blurring the truth. And what made me feel even more weird about remote viewing is that I saw another interview with Sean Ryan, man, and he was kind of spot on about a few of these the terrorist attack, with especially the one at Trump Tower, But he goes, did you see the crucifixion of Jesus? And the remote viewers like kind of shuddered, like had this look, like didn't answer, but just had this quiet look about her, like she was shuddering. And everyone, I know, and I've seen a few, people quoting Bible scriptures and stuff, but that to me was kind of like, that's creepy. But the next, but go check that episode out. That's Monkey People. The next clip I want to play is an interview with Mr. Matt Sieber from East Tennessee Bigfoot. He tells us, I believe in this clip, a family story. Shout out to Matt. I hope everything's good out that way. I haven't spoken to him except a few times. He was rubbing Tennessee, beating Oklahoma. I was sick about it. Didn't even say nothing back. I was that sick. But here's Matt.
Didn't quite get to your family's encounters.
Right.
And with the audio and all that stuff. So, could you tell me? I know you said you had some of your family members who have seen this thing around that same time. Could you tell us?
Yeah. Well, I've already talked about my son's encounter back in 2005, but that very winter, my then sister-in-law had an encounter. It was probably 3 to 4 miles from where we lived at the time. She saw something cross the road in front of her, probably at 50 yards away, and it climbed up a high wall in 3 steps. I went to the location and measured. It was about 20 feet, and it climbed that high wall in 3 steps. And this was very steep. It was probably at least 65-degree incline. So it was almost straight up as far as I was concerned. And she said it just blew up it like nothing. And when it got to the very top into the tree line, it hid behind a tree and looked out from behind the tree and watched her drive by. Now, this was a late night sighting, so she didn't see a whole lot of detail, but she could see the reflection of her headlights in its eyes as she turned. So that was one encounter that my then sister-in-law had. My sister and her entire family had an encounter prior to 2005. And it was at near the Oak Ridge Nuclear Reservation in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, if anybody's familiar with that area. This is where the atomic bomb's uranium was enriched for World War II. It is still off limits to a lot of folks. It's a pretty big area, and you just don't go into this place. But there is a road that you can drive through the reservation to get from one city to the next. And they were on that road coming home late one night. And as they turned the curve, there was this 4-foot-tall thing, very slender, very small, very emaciated, and just very unhealthy looking thing standing on the side of the road, watching them as they passed. She had a pretty good look at it. She said its knuckles were below its knees, but it was very scraggly. It was very rough looking. And I had people mention to me at some point that it's possible that it may have been involved in some radioactive activity there. It may have gotten into something and was very sick, because there is radiation in that area, because they, as far as I know, they still enrich uranium at the Oak Ridge Y-12 plant. And her entire family saw this thing. Her 2 sons, her daughter, and her husband saw this as they drove by. And of course, her husband wanted to stop and go back, and she claimed that she was hitting him in the arm, telling him not to stop and not to turn around. Just get me out of here. So, and then 2013, 2014. My mother, who recently passed away, had a sighting in the same area as my ex-sister-in-law did. She was driving to church on a Wednesday night. It was fall of the year, and I think the time had changed already, and it was dark around 6:30 in the evening. And she turned the corner, and directly across the road was the local garbage dump. And on the right side of the road, she noticed a very large dead cedar tree on the side of the road. She had never noticed it before, but that's what she saw. When she came back from church, that cedar tree was gone. And I went there the next day after my sister hollered at me and said, "Hey, Mom saw something." And we went up there, and I took a few pictures, and I did find a very large triangular-ish imprint in the mud, probably around 17 inches long right there. And there was no tree. There was no tree trunk. There was no sawdust. There was never a cedar tree there on the side of the road. I believe, and I have had other people mention this type of sighting to me, where they saw this large brown cedar tree on the side of the road as they went one direction, and as they came back, it was gone.
Man, great story. I loved I loved having that conversation. We had 2 episodes with him, or I had 2 episodes with him. But the first episode we tried to record, and it literally was just like would not allow. We were getting into some pretty deep conspiracies on stuff, and it just was not allowing us to basically record. It kept kicking him, and it was just a mess and a half trying to get that situated. But he was a really great info, especially on infrasound. And speaking of infrasound and Bigfoot, the interview with that I had with Cryptids of the Corn, geez, audio was a little not good on it, but here's a clip from Justin and Jay from Cryptids of the Corn talking about infrasound.
I mean, from your Native American background and everything like that, we've talked about this. I talked about this with you a lot when you were on our show. Like, I'm not very well versed in the southern tribes, but we do a lot with Algonquins, right? Because a lot of our tribes have been heavily influenced by the Algonquin. What's the words? I'm forgetting the words. But the Algonquin folklore, the Algonquin legend, and the Algonquin way of thinking. So a lot of our smaller tribes in the Great Lakes area, that's kind of what's been influenced them. So they always talk about, like, the Fae, for example, their version of the Fae, the Lost Tribes. They don't, when they say that that's the Lost Tribe, they are just like you're saying, that they're just intelligent things. They're not necessarily saying they're people, but they're saying that they are on the same, I guess, level as people, to be respected as people are.
Yeah, they have like it's like a common knowledge of how things are done. And that's one thing that, I felt like I said, I was on one show, and, I'm bad. Like, sometimes I'll read comments and, shows I've been on, and I'm like, man, like, people are like, God, they're like, what do you mean by tribe? You never answered what if it's people. And I'm like, and in my head, I could comment back and I, give some long, but I guess maybe just a little, hint. But yeah, that's, Cherokees, we call them secret, like you said, secret tribe. Where they're around. And, one thing that, and I know you're a scientific guy, one thing that I always find interesting, with the different things, what they think they are, what they do. But one thing that has always intrigued me the most, and I had conversations with people about infrasound.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I off camera, off podcast talked, about that type of quality. And I told you a story about a guy and his group was hit by it, and they were all sick, and they were seeing things that weren't there, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And you gave me a pretty good answer, kind of description of what that could be, and or what your thoughts were, if you don't mind sharing that, Justin.
Yeah. No, so infrasound, first off, it's now, let me try to get it right. I think it's 17 hertz to 0.2 hertz. So it's incredibly low. You actually aren't hearing, not so with animals producing infrasound, you're hearing other sounds in the human hearing range accompanying infrasound. Infrasound to us doesn't make a sound. But large-bodied animals, for example, mostly mammals, use it for communication for long distances because it carries really well. Elephants will actually talk through their feet. Some whales produce it. Most of the time, the whales are using just volume kind of to overpower because they're so big, it's essentially a building. So they kind of get over that other ways. But with tigers, for example, tigers produce infrasound, and it can cause, Yehola talked about it, Yehola Tiger talked about it off air, is that there's that famous video of like a news reporter, I can't remember what country they're in, where they're going to the back of the tiger enclosure, and they're within 10 feet of it. There's obviously the bars in between the tiger and the guy, but the tiger hits the guy. You see it like cupping its mouth almost, and ooh, and it's such a weird sound for the tiger to be making. And the guy's literally hitting the floor, peeing himself, and he can't move. His eyes are like rolling the back of the head, like he's passing out. And that's being hit with infrasound. So, sorry, what it does to our brain, depending on which so with infrasound, what frequency of infrasound you get hit with, like I said, it's essentially about a 20 hertz range. And hertz is just a way to measure that kind of sound. With that, depending on what you're getting hit with, it can cause, very low amounts of fear, depression, anxiety, all the way up to full-on panic, passing out, and it can even start vibrating like your inner ear bones and the fluid in your eyes and start causing hallucinations, depending on how close it is. So depending on what animal it is, and we and Yehola talked about, there was the tribe in Africa, and me and you talked about this forever. The tribe in Africa, when they got elephants back, the suicide rate in men went from like 2% to like 40% in 1 year. And because the elephants actually put infrasound through their feet, they have the giant spongy pad on their foot that's basically an ear, so they can talk through the ground with each other. What was happening is the elephants are on both sides of this village, passing infrasound back and forth all day and all night, and it was causing so much depression in these men, they were killing themselves. The Suicide Cliffs in California were another famous one, where it was a natural, the way that this bay was shaped, that it was creating natural infrasound. So it wasn't like causing people that didn't have depressive tendencies already any issue, but people that were like already kind of depressive, right? If you had issues with depression in the past, that kind of stuff, would go get gas there, and then they would jump off the cliff. They'd kill themselves. They'd have their kids in the car. They'd leave everything. Like, it wasn't like a planned spot to go kill yourself. It was, and then once they found out that the infrasound was going on, they moved the gas station, like 20 miles, and it stopped. Yeah. Because when you're driving by, you're not staying there far, long enough. But yeah, so that's with the infrasound. And so with, let's say Bigfoot, and like I said earlier, there's no proof Bigfoot's a primate. There's at least evidence suggests Bigfoot's a large mammal. With people saying covered in hair and observing even lactation and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But with convergent evolution and mimicking behaviors and all that stuff, animals with the similar niches will do the similar things. They look similar ways. Like dolphins and sharks are the best example. They are not close related whatsoever. But if you just take their rough body plan and their rough behaviors, they are very, very similar animals. So with Bigfoot, but if you take a step further back in the tree, Bigfoot has hair, as far as we can tell from eyewitness accounts. Bigfoot lactates, all that. And then from cast, and we even do a little cast class, real Bigfoot, well, at least we believe real Bigfoot cast are, they appear to have this supersized spongy pad. And that could be like tigers use it, they use it for noise cancellation. So you can have this giant heavy animal walking around, not making any sound. Asian forest elephants are famous for it. The second largest land mammal on the planet. Can't hear them. They move silently, unless they want to make noise, right? And if an Asian forest elephant wants to make noise or doesn't care, it's making noise, sure, it'll make noise. If you can watch videos of them sneaking into like farms and stuff like that to steal. It's a 10,000 pound animal that's making no noise like a ghost. And I mean, we've all heard, like Weston Show, for example, Sasquatch Chronicles. Talking about in his intro, it talks about the one floating. Yeah, it's like it was this huge animal that was just floating by. You watch those videos of Asian forest elephants, 10,000 pound animal, and just gliding by like a ghost because it wants to be hidden. So Bigfoot has, as far as we can tell from these casts, the same soft pads, and they're the right way as far as we can tell to produce infrasound, and they have this device. So are they using infrasound on purpose is a good question. And to what degree? How much control over do they have? Are they just able to, is it just an accident thing where we're near them and we freak out? And we, like I said, infrasound causes panic, causes, super anxiety. They can literally make you pass out, wake up in a car. So is that an accident? Can they kind of control it like a weapon? Just get you out of their area? Be like, all right, let's keep you moving. Or can they actually control the volume of how much they do to you? Like if they just want you to be a little uneasy so you keep walking, can they do that? Or if they just want to crank it up to 11 to just make sure you're running the whole time out, peeing yourself. The one guy, I think it was either Wes's show or Mountain Monsters or Monsters Among Us, just Eric's show, talked about the guy. He's seen the Bigfoot, like just the edge silhouette of it, got hit with what he said later was infrasound. He had the gun in his hand the whole time. He had a big rifle in his hand, deer hunting. And he woke up in the car and he was driving down the road. He was covered in vomit. He was covered in pee. And he's still holding the gun. And he's like, not one fiber in my brain ever wanted me to fight.
Just complete flight.
Yeah. So is that's the that could be infrasound. That could be just them hitting that button. We talk about it a lot with what we believe could be nesting sites or birthing areas, just because which we could talk about later, like Hocking Hills is just famous for the absolute scariest Bigfoot encounters that nobody ever gets hurt in.
Hocking Hills, Ohio.
Hocking Hills, Ohio. Hopefully that answered your question.
No, that definitely did, and it most certainly did. But that's the infrasound. I'm always intrigued by that. I've told on multiple different podcasts when I've been interviewed about my first encounter. Well, my first encounter, but kind of an encounter I had at Merle Home Park. And I remember hearing a roar and then just kind of like blanking out. Like my fight or flight was like cooked. It was over. But 2024 was a good time for the podcast. And, I absolutely loved every guest I had on. I've had a lot of people that people had never heard of before. And here's one of them. They told a story about the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame.
A couple of cabinets that, have, museum pieces in from, different Hall of Fame inductees. And this particular statue was in between the Toby Keith area and somebody else. It might have been Merle Haggard, I don't remember, to the right. And it was about a 2-foot tall statue, not a very big statue. But she noticed that statue. She knew that statue was there. She sits down, the statue's at her back, and the very first word that comes out of the ITC device was statue.
Oh, wow.
And she lost it. She lost it. She booked out of there. I ain't never seen anybody run that damn fast.
She got some going.
She got up and she was like, nope, not doing that. Can't do that.
And that was from After Walker Paranormal. They shared a story about somebody that was in their investigative group who, I guess there was a ghost next to her. So like I said, those machines, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm sure that there's more high-tech machines than just my iPhone, but shout out to those guys, After Walker Paranormal. They're based out of Chakota, Oklahoma. They were one of my guests in early March, I believe. And then I had them on for Halloween, and that was the Halloween edition of that interview. One of my favorite interviews that I've done. I love talking about movies. That's like my favorite thing. And here's a clip from the Halloween edition of with Kevin Nez talking about horror movies. In 2024, with the different, I guess you could say the SAG strike, TV shows kind of took a hit. But there were a lot of good movies, a lot of good horror movies in 2024. And the first movie that I'm kind of interested to hear what your opinion of, because it was very, I guess, polarizing, is In a Violent Nature. What did you think about that movie?
All right. This one, I can't remember. I want to say either Instagram or TikTok. They were showing images or the other little trailer of it. And I was like, okay, what is this? Another slasher horror film? I wasn't expecting much. I when new movies come out, when I hear the hype on whatever it is, I'm like, all right. I don't like to read into it. I don't like watching too many trailers because to me, a lot of trailers spoil the movie or basically show you the ending sometimes.
Yeah.
For example, it's an older film, Quarantine, the remake from that movie Wreck. I just did a show on it on East Society's 31 Days of Horror. They show the very, very last scene in the trailer, and it's on the poster. I'm like,
yeah.
What's this? But that film, I was like, so okay, I didn't really want to know much about it. I didn't want to look into it. Just figure some big brute of a guy running around killing people in the woods. I said, okay, we've seen that before, but let me see what they're going to do in this one. So they had a screening for it. It only played in Reno for like I think a few days. It didn't have like a long run. So I went, okay, let me go see it. I got there was only like a handful of people in like one of the biggest theaters that they have. Movie came on, and I was like, all right, cool. It's slow paced, and we got this guy that's coming back, and he's chasing the killer, the campers or whatever they are out in his realm. But what I loved about it when it was over was the way they shot it. I realized the second time I went to see it, there was no score, there was no music in the background, but the way they filmed it, to me, it was kind of like playing a video game. Like,
yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
We just see the back of this guy walking through the woods, going from place to place, and killing fools. I mean, there was a reason why he was killing people. He wasn't just out there killing people that were in the way. But when it was said and done, I was like, man, this movie was amazing. The practical effects, CGI, it's good. But when you do practical effects, especially for horror films, like me, I love the blood and the guts and all that. Give it to me. Give me more. And I was blown away with what I saw on the screen.
Let me ask you real quick. What about that scene where she's doing yoga off the cliff? Oh my God, man! I looked over at my wife and we looked at each other. We're like, "Ain't no way he gonna pull that all the way through."
I was shocked. I mean, I was like, "Wow, they're really doing this for." They basically call it the yoga scene. That's as soon as the movie was over, I was watching reviews and listening to reviews, and everybody was going to that scene. If you have no idea what we're talking about, and go to YouTube, just type in a violent nature yoga scene and see all that it is, all in its glory. And
it's insane, man. It's insane.
I was just like, wow. I mean, I was probably the loudest one in the theater. I mean, I was like, holy shit. I'm like, oh my God. I couldn't believe that they were doing this, especially in 2024 with the CGI. I mean, there's a lot of horror movies that use CGI blood, CGI effects. If it's done right, cool. But there's a lot that, I mean, I don't know how to do any of that. I'm just a fat guy behind a microphone talking shit. But I like what they do when it if you use CGI, make it look awesome. But when you use practical effects, I know it's more expensive. It was amazing on what they did, and the sound that it made when when he was snapped her neck and then pulled her head through her stomach. I was just like, what's happening?
I couldn't even believe it. I literally heard an old lady behind us go, "Oh my God." I was like, man.
I was like, whoa. I mean, even those Terrifier movies.
Oh man, I haven't seen them. I haven't seen them.
Oh, do yourself a favor. Watch those movies. The third one's in the theater now. I have not seen it yet. I'm going to see it tomorrow with my son. My youngest son, he's 19, about to be 20, so he's not like a little kid. But a friend of mine, when we were doing our 31 Days of Horror, we always try to record early so I can throw out an episode every single day of October. I think we're up to, what's today's date?
We're on the 15th.
The 15th. So the 15th episode is up right now. Just go to Spotify and search E Society.
And go check out E Society Podcast. One thing I love about having Kevin Nez on my podcast is we can talk about movies for days. And I love it. I love movies. I love talking about movies. Eventually, I'm going to have him on, and we'll be talking about some wrestling, WWE, AEW. I love talking about that stuff. Debating on it. I enjoy that. And so that was Kevin Nez from the Mac Nez Podcast and the E Society Podcast. Go check them out. The next clip, we get into a little bit conspiracy on this one with Hunters of the Paranormal. I had him on during Halloween. If you guys haven't noticed, Halloween is my favorite month of the year, besides Christmas Day. I love it. I love the month because it's just we can get spooky. We can talk about these things. It's just people are more apt to talk about these things, share stories, and all that stuff. And this is a clip from my interview with Hunters of the Paranormal.
I like paranormal, Star Wars, and I'm 52 years old, so I remember the In Search Of shows. I got to see Leonard Nimoy and they would have shows on there, Bigfoot and stuff like that. So I was always fascinated with it. But I lived up in northern part of Indiana, where it's just like a lot of cornfields up there. So when I say there's Bigfoot down here, people, or in Indiana, people, if they associate what I'm getting ready to tell you with up north, that's not correct, because I'm down in the big timber along the big rivers and between the big rivers, and there's a bunch of cave systems that's in here. And I'll tell you what got me into it was it would have been in November of 1994. I had moved down here with my cousins to go to college, and I just absolutely loved to deer hunt. And during October of that year, I had gotten my first deer with a bow, and we was excited and everything. And we hunted this little farm. It was an old guy that he would go down to Florida for the winter. So a buddy of ours, he kind of watched over the farm. So we got permission to go in there, as long as you don't tear nothing up. So basically we was all going in there to hunt, but we were watching out for the place too at the same time. And so me and my cousins, back then I didn't have a tree stand. And I do now. I hunt out of tree stands, and I didn't have a climber or anything, but I hunted down on the ground. And it was opening day. It was opening day of gun season. And when we left the house, we left an hour early because we wanted to get there before daylight, because we figured they would run the other hunters would run the deer into us, in the little area where we was at. And so prior to this, we had went in there and scouted and everything, and my cousins were going to hunt on the outside edge of the field, overlooking the fields, to maybe get some shots at deer running by on the field. Well, I went inside the woods about good 100, 200 yards, but I went back in the back of this little woods, and it connected up to this great big section of woods, like a deep section of woods. But in this area that I picked out, I was standing up on a ridge top, and I was overlooking an area that looked like a bowl. Like a depression in the ground, a bowl. And there was 4 ridge tops that come in there. And I was standing on one of them, but there was one to my left, there was one to my right, and one straight across from me. But if anything come in there, they would come in within 30 yards and I'd have a perfect shot, perfect broadside shot. If they come down any of the 4 ravines, I'd have a shot at them. So that morning, when we left the house, it was real foggy, and down here where I'm at, the fog is really, really bad. Like, it's like driving in a bowl of milk when you're trying to drive through this stuff. It's like you got to go real slow and turn your brights off and try to, make your way down the road. Well, this was one of those particular mornings when it was just super, super foggy, and it was overcast as well. I remember that. And when it's overcast and foggy, it's not only dark, it's dark. Like, you can't see your hand in front of your face or nothing. And so I decided when I went in the woods, I was young and dumb and stupid, and I probably shouldn't have done this, but I decided I wasn't going to use a flashlight going in the back in that woods. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it is. So I'm in the dark, and I'm feeling my way back there, and I get about halfway back, and I hear something. And so I flashed the light on, and I just kept it down, pointed at the ground, flashed the light on, thinking maybe it's a hunter that, I didn't want to get shot. So I flipped it on. I know it's stupid, but I flipped the light on, and it lit everything up around me. And I could see a doe and a little one standing up on a little rise to my left. And so I shut that flashlight off real quick. And I thought, man, I've already spooked them out of here, because that kind of took off when they seen me. So I thought, man, I've already bloated. I've run them out of here, but I'm just going to keep on going, because I want to hunt, So I get back there. I get all the way back to the back, find my spot, still in the dark. And in this particular spot that I found, there were 4 trees coming up and out of the ground, and you could get kind of in the middle of these 4 trees, and you had like a little natural blind there. So I get in there. I was using an old 20 gauge Remington pump shotgun with a slug barrel on it, and I leaned it up against the tree, and I'm standing there in the dark. And when you're standing in the dark, I mean, time, time, you don't know really what the time is, because it could be a minute or 2 or whatever. But it seemed like I was there for maybe 10 minutes at the most. And off to my right, where this ridge is to my right, is where the deepest part of the woods is, and I hear movement coming. And I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to be good because the hunters must be moving in here and they're trying to run a deer in here, or they're going to run the deer in here to me, you know? And so this thing comes down the hill and it gets right past me. It gets just right past me at probably, I don't know, if you're looking at the clock, it'd probably be at about the 11 o'clock position, just past me. And it's standing there and it got real quiet. And so I'm looking down in the dark. You know, you can't see it at this point in time. You can't see a silhouette, nothing. You can just hear it walking down in there. So it's no more than 20 yards. It may have even been a little closer than that to me. And so I'm looking down in there, and then all of a sudden, these eyes just appeared in the dark, and they was glowing, and they were like an amber color, like an amber yellow color, and they had these black slits in them. And when I first saw it, my first thought was, are you really seeing this? And you know, my best way to describe it to you is they were about the size of a like a tennis ball maybe, and they were I don't know, they was probably 6-8 inches apart, and they were probably up, I'm guessing they was probably up off the ground about 8 feet.
Man.
And so it's looking right up. It looks right up at me. And I'm thinking to myself, am I really seeing this? Am I really seeing this? You know, like it's not computing. And I'm thinking the only thing I can think of that looked like it was Felix the cat. You remember those old clocks? That's the Felix the cat with the eyes that move back and forth. Well, that's what it looked like, but a yellow, like ambery color to it. And so I'm sitting there looking down at it. And then while I'm looking at it, all of a sudden, it's not like, I don't know, they call it mind speak or whatever. I don't know. Maybe mind playing tricks on me or whatever. But at first I thought, well, that somebody's coming here with coal miner lights on, and they're messing with me, trying to run me out of here, you know. But the thing about the eye shine, it wasn't eye shine. It was like a bioluminescence, I guess you could call it. So it was lit up. You know what I'm saying? It didn't light anything up around it. That was the weird thing about it.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, it didn't light anything up around it, but it was lit up itself, if that makes sense. And so I'm sitting there looking at it, and then I get this message, and it says, I just wanted you to know that I was here. And then it either closed its eyes or turned its head and looked the other direction, and then it started walking off, and it just walked, and it went straight up the hill to my left, and then I could hear it going on out into the field. And the something that I've always found odd about this whole thing is, and I know people ain't going to believe this, but this is the God's honest truth. I didn't run. I didn't get scared. I was so bewildered and thinking, what in the world did I just see? I just stayed right there and I hunted.
Yeah, that was crazy. He hunted the whole time too after that. I'd be out of there so fast. But shout out to Hunters of the Paranormal. I met him through TikTok basically, and he shares different videos with me, and I'm so bad at replying sometimes, but he finds all these obscure kind of UFO videos that I'm like, man, that's crazy how you're finding these. But shout out to him, and I'm hoping to have him on again in 2025. That's kind of the plan. Let's see here. Mayhem beating. Hope everyone is well and safe tonight. So as of right now here in Oklahoma, we decided to get snow, which is kind of cool, I guess. The city of Tulsa, city of Broken Arrow, Tulsa County, Wagner County. Boy, they out thick tonight. They trying to make sure everybody get home safe, which shout out, but this stuff is still coming down, and I don't think we got enough sand or salt to help this snow that's hitting right now. I got a few more clips for y'all tonight. We're at an hour and 40 minutes. One of the craziest stories that I've heard here in the last, stories that I've heard here in the last 2 years of the podcast for sure. But probably in the last couple years. Came from Miss Lavon Rodriguez, who she is the creator of the original ghost stories of the Res Facebook page. I'm glad I got in contact with her. And she came on for the Halloween special. So this is from the Halloween special in 2024. I hope you guys like this story because it's creepy. I'm going to kick it over to Levon real quick. Growing up, did you have a haunted house, or was there, someone? My wife actually commented this because she was wanting to hear this story that I was told that you had. That's pretty crazy about a clown.
Oh yeah. Well, when I was younger, on our reservation, some really bad things started happening. Kids were committing suicide, and a lot were my friends. We were all teenagers. They were getting into some crazy stuff, is what I know, like, yeah, devil worshiping and stuff like that. And I didn't do it because my grandma was Catholic, and she was my everything. So even like the Ouija board, what Don was talking about, I just wouldn't play it because of my grandma. But the kids I hung around with did it, and I was around, and every weekend I'd hear of a new one, committing suicide. And every time they found them, they would be trying to pull the ropes off of their necks. Like they'd have gorges into their necks trying to scratch that rope off. So what happened was this police officer up there, he was on duty, and he pulled over this really fancy black car. I'm not too sure. Some say it's a hearse and some say it's just really fancy. Not too sure, like a limo, like an old limo or something. So the cop pulled him over, and he's talking to the driver, and he's asking the driver, "What are you doing and why are you here?" And the driver says, "We're driving around looking for some people that we need to pick up." And he says, "Okay, well, who are these in the back?" He said, "I need names." So the driver gave him names. And so he called up to dispatch, how they do. Called up to dispatch, and the dispatcher says, "Okay, well, give me the names." So, on the reservation, we have BIA cops that come from all over. So he wasn't from where I'm from. So he started running off the names, and then the dispatcher turned around and told him, "You know what? Get the hell out of there. Get out of there." And the cop's like, "Why? What's going on?" At the same time, this limo driver or whatever starts turning into a clown. And he's laughing like a really evil, wicked laugh, growling. And the dispatch told him, "All those boys that you're talking about are there?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Those boys are deceased. Those are the boys that committed suicide."
Oh
And
my gosh.
they're sitting there staring, and like they're staring like just into space, like, they have no, I guess you would say, soul in them. They're just there. And he's like, he's going crazy. And the reason why I know this is true too is because the lady who came in, she was she came to the reservation. She was from Lander, a town off from the reservation. She's a white lady. And she came in and she says, "I know that whole story because when we found him, he was on the ground freaking out, like crying. He was, really freaking out." And he's like, "They're right there. I'm talking to them." And everyone kept telling him there's nobody there. He's like, "They're right here." And so, you hear about the clown, and it's not just our reservation, it's other reservations that have this clown. But one night, me and my mom came home from the casino. It was like maybe 3 o'clock in the morning. And where I live, it's like I'd probably say like a horseshoe. It was a village shaped like a horseshoe. And in the middle of the village, like you could just point, when you pull into the driveway, right in the middle of the village, there's this old rickety playground. It was, just tore down, rickety. And we pull in at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I hear carnival music, and I'm all like, "What the hell's going on?" But my lights are, the lights that stay on for a minute, the safety lights. So when you go inside, they shut off. And I'm looking straight out, and it's faced right towards this playground. And there's a clown there doing flips, back and forth, laughing and giggling, and just weird. And I'm standing there like, "Am I really seeing that?" And my mom's like trying to pull me inside. She's like, "Get the hell inside," I'm like, "No, it's really happening." And this thing is just flipping around, and you could hear the music getting louder and louder and louder. And so I finally went in, but it was just something that I didn't believe, because you hear stories about it, but you don't believe it, And yeah, there's a clown there, and it helps people commit suicide.
Man,
Hmm.
hey, they wasn't lying about that story. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's not. I got a story on my page, and I think they're from South Dakota. They have stories about the clown. Yeah.
What do you think that is? Do you think that's like a spirit that's masking itself to make people comfortable?
I don't think it's to make them come. I don't, because these are teens that were. I mean, I understand if it was little kids, a clown was what we saw at the circus and stuff like that, right? But this clown, when I seen it, it was black and white, and it just looked nothing but friendly. It looked nothing like you didn't want to, like your hair stood up all over when you saw this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's man, those are some wicked stories. I haven't heard much about clowns, and I know during the pandemic there was stories going around about clowns showing up and then people passing away. So I heard some things like that during COVID or right before COVID. But man, I get goosebumps when every time I hear that little section of a clip of her stories. Creepy to me, man. So creepy. Um, OKP said the Suicide Clown story is the best I've ever heard. I have seen it before. OKP, let me know. Shoot me a message on Facebook. I'd like to hear it. Mayhem Beating said that's demonic, nothing but demonic. Yeah, it's something. That, and when in that interview, I should have asked another question, but I decided not to. But I just wanted to let her roll. But one thing that I wanted to kind of know more about, and I may ask her about this too, is kind of like um, Rod from Launch Tales was talking about the Goat Man and how he kind of makes you drink and makes you do things that aren't right. Makes you not saying like drinking is bad. I mean it is. It's an addiction for a lot of people, but I'm saying in terms of like drinking and uh, allowing yourself to be like overtaken in that moment by it is what I'm kind of, maybe I'm not being very correct or communicating in the right way, but it's very interesting to me that these entities mask themselves as someone who's good looking, slick, but this entity's, dressed up as a clown, basically. That's just it's very interesting, very, very creepy. But I appreciate her sharing those stories. I might have her on again. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. And like, share, comment. It helps the podcast out. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Get closer to that monetization. Unfortunately, I'll run some ads. I'm trying to upgrade my equipment, but we'll see how it goes. I love doing the podcast. We're going to keep rolling. 2025 is going to be big. And my second to last interview of 2024 was with a man named Barry, based out of Arizona. He's Apache. And he tells a story when he was a cop that, is a telltale sign of, kind of that spidey sense.
Just happens to tell me, he said, "Damn, what if you get a call on the other side of the lake tonight and something happens?" And we start joking, we start laughing about it. And like an hour later, after midnight, dispatch gets a hold of me and said, "Hey, we need you to respond to the south side of the lake. It says a vehicle accident." I was thinking, damn, I looked at it and said, "Man, because of you jinxed me." I was like, "Man, okay, I'll be en route." Said EMS en route. Then they said, "No, negative. EMS will be en route after you confirm that there was an accident." So I made my way out to that side of the lake, and I found a vehicle, but the vehicle was not in an accident. It was just parked on the side of the road. I even got out of my vehicle and I started walking around and checking the vehicle. And I said, "There's no damage to it. There's no flat tires. There's no skid marks on the road." And in my mind, I started thinking, "Is this an ambush? Is someone gonna pop out and because the police department was getting a lot of threats at that time. So I was thinking, this is someone's going to jump out, and this is where it's going to end for me. But I started hearing something off in the distance on the other side of the roadway, and it was over on the bushes, and there was some big saguaro cactus. But every time I shine my flashlight to those saguaro cactus, I always see a figure, step behind that cactus. And so I got my patrol vehicle, and there's no way for me to turn around at that spot where that car was. So I drove up the road. I found a place to turn around, and I started making my way back to the car. But something, told me, said, check the car again. So I stopped and I checked the car, and I gave dispatch the license plate, and I asked them, hey, can you do a record check and see if another officer can go to the residence and see if these individuals here, and ask them what their vehicle is doing here. So I got back in my patrol vehicle, and something told me that I need to go back to where I turned around at. So I drove down the road a little ways. I turned around. I made my way back to where I had turned around before, and slowly I turned my vehicle around and started making my way back to where that vehicle was. I mean, I've never freaked out like this before. I've been in shootouts and hostage situations and stuff like that, and I've never had that fear as I had right now. And when I was coming down the road, I was coming up to a group of mesquite trees, and next thing you know, this guy just jumps out in the middle of the road, waves his hands in the air, then runs back into the mesquite trees. I step on my brakes real quick. I grab my radio, and my cousin Daniel, he said, man, I've never heard you so scared before. So you just got on the radio and said, someone just jumped in front of me. Someone just jumped in front of me. And Daniel said that, oh, this is it. This is where Barry dies. So I told dispatch too. So I'm gonna step out of my vehicle. I'm gonna do a welfare check on that male. I think, oh, this is where I'm gonna be taken, God. This is where I'm gonna be taken. So I put my radio down. I put my vehicle in park. I jumped out of my patrol vehicle, grabbed my pistol out, and I had the flashlight. I think, oh, this is where I'm gonna end. This is where it ends for me.
Oh,
but I make my way to the mesquite tree woods, and it's a drop off, and I'm standing there thinking, man, it's gonna come out again. It's gonna come out. But instead of finding something that was terrifying or scary, was at the bottom of the slope. It was a wash, and there was a little mud puddle. From that vehicle, it was an elderly couple, and they were out there gathering some firewood. And what the guy said was somehow his wife's door opened, and she came tumbling out and rolled down and got stuck in that mud puddle. And when he tried to go down there to help her, the car rolled away from them. And when I found it down the road from where they were at was where it came to a rest. And they sat there most of the night, and the guy tried to start a fire, but it was so cold that the fire kept on going out. And when he saw me pass the first time, he was trying to yell at me, down here, but I didn't stop. And when he saw me come the second time, that's when he told his wife that he was going to jump out and wave me down instead of wave me down. Man, he really scared me good. But that's when I tell some younger officers that I train. I tell them, hey, you have that spidey sense when something's not right. Just follow it. Sometimes it might be terrifying, but you never know. Somebody might need your help, and you'll come across something that's least unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when that happened.
Man, You had me, man. I was like, oh well, gosh, but it sounded like though too that sometimes it's just crazy. You just get that sense like, oh, I shouldn't leave here. There's something here that I need to
Yeah.
figure out. And
Oh yeah.
you made the round that's fine. You're like, man, I feel like I'm not saying all or
Yeah.
or most. I'm just saying some people just be like, well, I think it's just an abandoned car. Let's just see if we can
Yeah.
keep it moving. But that sixth sense got like you were talking about earlier. Got a hold of you there.
Oh yeah. Wasn't a pleasant one, but hey, someone got to go home. Somebody got to hug their grandma and grandpa for however long they they've been around or they are around. We didn't get a call the next day of elderly couple that was found frozen out there in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
They actually went home safe and sound.
Yeah. There was a comment here that said that was a good scary story. Man, yeah, that story, man. We always talk about. I was, even in my intro, I get that spidey sense. When I was growing up, I always used to kind of ignore that. I'd always ignore my gut, like I can manage my way around, and usually always something stupid happens, or something dumb happens, or somebody gets in trouble, or something like that, just because we didn't listen to ourselves and our body. Like I said, I think it's that spidey sense, that sixth sense, where people kind of know that hey, maybe maybe we shouldn't do that, or maybe we should make another plan, or whatever. But I appreciate everyone who has come on my podcast from. There's a few people that I didn't have on here. Rod from Lodge Tales, Dono from Red Scares, Matt Nat from Bigfoot Crossroads, Afterwalker Paranormal, Matt Sieber, Patrick Meekin, Kevin Nez from the Magnus Podcast. Let's see here, Hunters of the Paranormal, Weird Maine Paranormal, or Mysterious Nocturnal. Cryptids of the Corn. I'm trying to name everybody. See if my memory's right. Barry, the Apache Storyteller. Miss Levon from original the original Ghost Stories of the Res Facebook group. If I'm missing anybody, I apologize. I'm trying to do it off the top of the dome, and sometimes I'll just be forgetting. But no, 2024 was a good year for the podcast. 2025 is going to be even better, more content. The Patreon, I hate, I almost feel like I'm kind of like, hey, please, like begging. But one thing I'm trying to do over there is build kind of a community where you get your stories told, and also too, you get your listener stories. Like, for instance, the Bigfoot at the casino, that was a listener episode. She's subscribed to the Patreon, and she has stories to tell. I'd love to hear stories, and so we talk, and that's kind of how that got started. And Miss Rebecca's going to be on again for part 2 of the Bigfoot at the casinos. We're actually I think I'm going to try to get some more Men in Black stuff off of her. Try to see if there's any more details that she remembers. But everyone, man. Oh yeah, Rebecca, come on now. I had her on the podcast too right before. Derek Morris too as well. He was the final interview of 2024. So I think that's everybody. But I appreciate everyone who, like I said, continues to support the podcast, like, share, subscribe, and then when the live stream's over, comment on it. Let me know what you think. The questions that I want you guys to answer, if you can, in the comments below. Your favorite moment of 2024, your favorite podcast episode of 2024 for the podcast, for my podcast, your favorite interview in 2024, and then also too, give me some movies, some TV shows that you watched. Give me some recommendations, because there's sometimes I forget. Long Legs was another one that I loved. There's so many movies that I could have, that maybe I missed. OKP says get some of the Spirit Talkers on here. Eventually I'll try to get them guys over here. I know they're busy guys, and I'm busy myself, and recording dates and stuff like that. But like I said, we're gonna have all types of different guests on. You never know who's gonna show up. So, but like I said, the Patreon links in the description. Go join, be a tribe member. In the chat, I'll ask like, hey, what's a topic do you guys want to hear? And also too, like I can talk a little bit more spicy. There's a lot of stories that I have not told that I'm kind of afraid of telling YouTube just for weird reasons or whatever. You never know; they may hit you with that shadow ban, and I ain't trying to be shadow banned. Just different things. And there's people more willing to share stuff, in a kind of more gated community, I guess. But the Patreon, like I said, links in the description. Please, 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 please go support Not Your Grandma's Quilting on Facebook. Just type it in on Facebook. It'll be a picture. But there's different things that are for sale, and on the Facebook. Based out of Wagner County, I always like to support Oklahoma small businesses. If you're a business, and you would like for me to share your information, Yahola Tiger on Facebook, message me, or realwarcrypod@gmail.com. I'd love to shout your business out and do what I can to help, because I think with the way 2025 is going to be coming, I think we need to stay together in some form or fashion. But it's going to be interesting. But Saturday, 8:00 Central Standard Time, 9:00 Eastern Standard Time, on Patreon live, I will be having Mr. Ryan Knights and Jason Doe. If I'm pronouncing his name, it might be Dow, but from the Weird Maine Paranormal Group. You guys have heard Ryan before, but they've been in the middle of a documentary. They've been just put out first 2 parts, and then we'll be talking about some of the investigations. They come across some weird stuff out that way in Maine. Maine's a weird state. It feels like it's old world to me, but I appreciate everyone. Let's see here. Mayhem B says, I make jewelry, willing to help you with shout outs. I appreciate that. Also, you too as well. Let me get in contact with me on Facebook, and I'll do what I can to shout you out, especially if your business is good now. If it's cheeks, I'm gonna lie. No, I'm just kidding. I ain't gonna do that. That's crazy. But yeah, let me know. I want to, like I said, I like people that are coming on my podcast. I always like to support them in every way that I can. You guys see that all the time. I'm always sharing people that that help me out, and also that share my stuff and help me out too as well. And I can help them out too as well. Give and take. But for 2024, we saying goodbye. 2025 is here. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be cinema. I'll say it again, straight cinema. But I appreciate everyone who continues to support the podcast. Do what you can. I'll do what I can. We'll cook. We'll cook together. But this is all. That is all, folks. I don't even know how to end this. I feel like with this episode here, I'm like saying goodbye to 2024, because 2024 felt like 13 years. Honestly, I felt like it was never ending, but it's ending. All right, guys. I appreciate you, and I'm gonna catch you on the next one.